Good morning, second hour. Let's talk about what we're doing today. So today I want to show you work from review 3. That doesn't make sense. Let's try that again. Today I want to go over the week 3 work. I'm going to go over today some answers for your work this week. I'm going to demonstrate how to use text citations. It's up to you if you want to use the answers I showed today. Then I'm going to go and review week 2 with you as well. I'm going to point out the green resources folder for you and go over the answers. So again, any answers I give today, you are more than welcome to use them. I also want to make sure you have some time in class today as well to take quiz 1 if you haven't done that yet. And frankly, me going over these answers from week 2 should help you out with that immensely. So that's the plan for today. I would suggest you open up your week 3 work at this moment. So I'm going to pause so you can do that, and I'm going to switch over myself to week 3 work. So yesterday I showed some potential answers for number 1, which is write your summary, reaction, connection, or questions to show your learning on the Puritans, what you learned yesterday on that. One of your questions on your next quiz, quiz 2, will be explain at least one thing you learned about Puritans, either historically or their writing. So yesterday I wrote, I learned the Puritans had very strong faith. And then I wrote, I wonder if they kept their faith in the new land. Hopefully yesterday you had some time. Well, you had time. Hopefully you've used your time yesterday to start your reading. So you were to read either Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation or Edward's Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. So first you had to answer what you read and then what you tried as far as reading strategies go. What part was difficult for you in reading it? So an example answer here. And if this answer applies to you, absolutely use it. So I read Bradford. The first example I'll show you Bradford. I'm going to show you examples from Bradford and Edwards, just so you know. All right, so the most difficult part and then strategies I tried to address that difficulty. So one difficulty I had when I read it was the syntax is very different from how we read, and syntax is how words are arranged in a sentence. One of the reasons why people like Yoda is because his syntax is different from standard English. It makes him more interesting. So I wrote the syntax is very different and challenging, so I found I had to reread parts to understand. Right, so an example for you of how to answer the question on reading strategies. And if you need to re-reference these answers later, they get posted at the end of the week in the green resources folder. And I'm going to show you that today if you haven't had a chance. All right, your third question is, what are the Puritan or colonial attitudes toward nature and or God? You choose subject in the writing. And you're going to have this question on your next quiz as well. So here's one way you can use text citations to get the answer. So notice you have 2 spots here, and the question is plural. It's asking about attitudes. Okay. So I can either have 2 answers, 2 different attitudes, or I can use the text and find at least one and prove it. So let me show you what I did. So I found this from the text. These ellipses at the beginning shows that there's more to the beginning of this sentence, but I didn't need to include it to show my point, so I didn't. I used those ellipses. That's a great way to shorten your text citations. Same thing at the end. This shows there's more to this sentence, but I didn't want to use all of it, so ellipses. Notice all of the quoted text is inside the quotation marks. So the quote I found was, they fell upon their knees and blessed the God of heaven who had brought them over the vast and furious ocean and delivered them from all the perils and miseries thereof. And then here I have the author, Bradford, and the page number where I found it. Then I have end parentheses. The period goes right after that end parentheses. So now that I have a text citation, I can explain what the text citation shows. This is a great strategy for answering any question in a literature class. Pull the actual text and then explain the text for your answer. So this text citation shows that the Puritans' attitude towards God at the start of the work is one of gratitude for getting them safely to new land. Leave that up there for a moment, and then I'm going to scroll on to number 4. So let's show you how to do this same thing, but for the Edwards work, for those of you who read that. And yes, you can use this answer. So from the Edwards work, we have question 4. What are the Puritan or colonial attitudes toward human nature and or survival? Again, you choose the subject, human nature or survival in the writing. And again, this question will be on quiz 2. So here I pulled a text citation from Edwards. Same thing. These ellipses at the beginning show, hey, there's more at the beginning of the sentence, but I don't need it. You have sat here in the house of God, provoking his pure eyes by your sinful, wicked manner of attending his solemn worship. So end quotation marks there, author's name in parentheses with the page number, and again, period goes right after all of that. For this one, I gave you a sentence starter instead of writing the whole thing because I want to do it in front of you. So, oh my goodness. Technology and the humans who use it. Let's try that again. So this shows that the Puritans' attitudes toward human nature are, so I reread it and then I decide, what do I want to say? So provoking his pure eyes by your sinful, wicked manner. So Puritans' attitudes toward human nature are mostly negative. This text quote, or you can say text citation, or even this quote. This quote discusses sin and not worshiping right. Okay. So first I have the citation and then I explain it. This is also a really good strategy for whenever you have to write in a literature class. If you have to write a paragraph on something you read, include a text citation like this. A paragraph is at least 5 sentences. You got 2 right there. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 5, I wanted to model another answer for you, and then we'll do week 2. So number 5, how are the Puritans and Native Americans alike and different? Yes, this question is on your quiz too. So you can write your answer, make 2 lists, make a Venn diagram, however you want to do it. I've already seen some great answers. I just straight up wrote it. So I'll read you my answer, and then we'll move on to week 2. So one way the Puritans and Native Americans are alike is they both have a creation story where there's good and bad in the world. Both peoples also want to survive in North America, but, so here's the part of my answer where I make sure I have the alike and the different. You want to make sure you have all the parts of the prompt. But the Puritans believe they are the superior culture and refer to Native Americans in their writings as savages. Right, so there's an example for you. So I'm going to have you finish that one up. And I'm going to pause here so you can open up week 2. And even if you've already handed it in, if you didn't get the best grade on it or even docked a point, you can always revise. So on your Schoology, I have your Schoology page up on the screen here. Connection to the G-Meets for Open Office is at the top. Then you have a welcome folder that's for students just entering, or whenever I get stuff from the office where they go, give us all the students, I usually put it in there because I don't know where else to put it. I figured stuff from office was a little too informal. Notice below here, if I go back, notice below here you have your quiz. So that's where you'll go to take your quiz, hopefully today. But I want to show you this folder, examples and resources, especially for those distance learners who may be watching this. This is really helpful. So every week when I go over work with you, the example that I show you, I write in the answers and then I post them here. Or I put in sentence starters so you have a start on your work. So before you even hand anything in, you can easily check, do my answers seem consistent with the kind of answers in here? This is also a good place to start if you're just confused and you're like, ugh, I don't even know. You ever have those days? You're like, ugh, I don't even know where to start. Start here. If you're behind, start here. Okay, so notice it's the same handout you have, it just has the answers. All right, so that's week 1. Let's go back and do week 2. And notice they're in order and they're labeled. They're labeled week 1, week 2, so it's easier for you to use them. So let's show you week 2. Make it a little bit bigger for you. Let's look at some of these answers. And if you already got week 2 back and you're like, lady, I did great, I got an A, you're welcome to go ahead and start working on the quiz while I review this. That's not a problem. All right. So what is imagery? There's more than one correct definition. Choose the one that makes the most sense to you. If you got it from somewhere else aside from lessons, give credit. Say where you got it from. So Oxford Dictionary or whatever it is. So to me, the best definition of imagery is image created in my mind by the writer's details. Something along those lines. Then give an example of imagery. So it shouldn't just be something you can see. This should be an example either from something we read or from class, something that illustrates imagery is the connection between writing and the mind. So my example was all of the description at the start of The Way to Rainy Mountain helps me picture, so here it shows the definition, helps me picture the land of Mama Day's tribe. And like I said earlier, yes, you can use these answers. That's another reason why we're going over it. So that way if you're stuck, you can get unstuck. 3, in your opinion, so hard to get that wrong, which work has the better use of imagery? World on the Turtle's Back or The Way to Rainy Mountain? And then explain your reasons. So this one included a sentence starter. So to me, my opinion is my first experience with The World on the Turtle's Back had better imagery to me, as I was lucky enough to hear it on the res. All right, the reasons why I think this, the storyteller, when I heard this story on the res, created excellent imagery with descriptive details. This was one of my favorite stories growing up for the imagery. I could really picture it. And they tell it with drums, so it has a rhythm that helps the storytelling flow. Right. So 4, describe or list main details of the indigenous peoples, Native American, Kiowa tribe, creation myth in The Way to Rainy Mountain. Then I gave you a hint that it involves a bear. That's one of the answers. There's at least 2. So I picked the one, how they believe the Big Dipper happened. So there's 8 siblings playing. The brother turns into a bear and he tries to attack his sisters. And then this tree, because remember, creation stories have supernatural elements. This tree says, climb up, climb on me and you'll be safe. And then the tree takes the sisters up into the air. And then for the second part, I used a text citation. 7 sisters were born into the sky and they became the stars of the Big Dipper. Pause so you can get that if you didn't have it before. All right, so 5. In The Way to Rainy Mountain, why does the author narrator return to Rainy Mountain? To bury and remember his grandmother. You could have also written to honor his grandmother. Many of you did, and that's a pretty good answer. And then the second part of week 2 was getting ready for your first quiz. So let's talk about some of these answers. We did a couple of them in class as well. So creation myth, story that explains how life started. Most societies have these. Second, you had to pick one of the characteristics of creation myths out of the 4 and then show an example that demonstrates this. So if I pick the characteristic, the natural world is explained, an example that shows that in the Norse culture, Thor creates thunder and lightning. And yes, you absolutely can include your own creation story, your own faith here. All right. 3, in the Iroquois First Nations creation myth, also known as the world on the turtle's back, animals are an important part of the story. Write or describe at least one way in which animals help humans in the creation story. And there's so many different ways. It's quite a few. So I said the turtle shows animals are important because animals helped humans from the start. The turtle gave the sky woman a place to land, and that formed the earth. Okay. 4, the twin brothers in the Iroquois First Nations creation myth have a relationship and symbolism meant to instruct the tribe. Write or describe below what the twins represent in human nature and or what lessons they teach about life. And many of you had really good answers for this on your homework. So the twins represent balance in the story. They represent good and bad, and them having equal power in the story shows that humans need to balance the two sides of their nature to live well. That the world's all about balance, in other words. And then for this last one, it's really hard to get it wrong because, again, it's your opinion. So either describe what story, work, or examples had the best imagery or the best thing you've learned so far. So at this point, I've achieved my goals as far as reviewing for you. At this point, you have the rest of the hour. I would suggest you use it finishing quiz 1, if you haven't done that already, and or getting in any missing work. If you have everything in for me, you are more than welcome to work on work for another class. That's no problem. As always, I'm in the meet if you need anything. Do well. You got this.